really, really glad, by the way, Lindsey, that you and Claire get along so well, because it makes the fact that Claire is able to listen to the show and book for the show in a way that it's like, yeah, I could have done it better. I don't ever get any of that kind of nonsense. Back when Claire did do this show, though, we had a guest on, Gary Hahn, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the National Comedy Center and Lucy Desi Museum. The National Comedy Center is the nation's museum and national archive dedicated to the art of comedy. It's in Jamestown, New York, which, of course, is Lucille Ball's hometown. It is a hall of fame for comedy, which means, Lindsey, you have no interest in this whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Couldn't care less. What?
The National Comedy Center, it's a great day trip. It's a great weekend trip. It is one of the most interactive museums in the country. I'll let Gary explain a lot of why that is, but it is because it's in New York, because it's a hall of fame, the Cooperstown of comedy. Guys, if you're about 90 minutes away from Buffalo, you are in the region and you are there to experience this. We are so thrilled to welcome Gary back. Hey, my friend, it's been a long time, but great to have you again. Welcome to Road Gang Radio.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be back. Sorry it's been so long, and yeah, just love talking to you guys. Always been a fan.
Well, and this is my first time to get to talk to you, and I know that it won't be the last because I already want to hang out and be your best friend because you have such a cool job. I have 90 questions and only one segment, so we're going to start unpacking the big one, and what I'm going to call the elephant in the room, but I mean is a good way, about comedy having a national archive and being supported by government here, which is interesting. So the center was formally designated by Congress as the nation's official cultural institution dedicated to comedy. Already so cool. So what does, if you can tell our audience, what does that designation sort of enable that maybe wouldn't be possible otherwise for comedy?
Well, mostly on that front, Lindsey, it just means that we are considered the National Archive. Most of the funding is private. It's based on admission and private foundation funding for the most part. When we were first building, there was a lot of New York State funding to help us build here in Jamestown. But at this point, it really just is a way to say that we are the nation's archive. And so when people are considering, there are other places that showcase comedy, but the National Comedy Center is the one and only archive that's preserving our comedy heritage for future generations.
Real quick, sorry, just a quick follow-up, because the word archive is a lot of things come to mind, but when we hear National Comedy Center, we think Funhouse, but from the archival standpoint, what's the serious kind of purpose underneath the laugh, so to speak? What's the serious purpose of giving this that real the archive side of it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, we believe that that comedy is a true art form, just like opera and art museums, etc. And so we believe that our comedy heritage deserves to be preserved. So we have the archives of Carl Reiner, and we have Joan Rivers' joke file that has nearly 70,000 jokes, and we have archives from Richard Pryor and Lenny Bruce, and it goes on and on and on. George Carlin, we have his entire archives. That's where things started back in 2016 when we secured George Carlin's archives. And what's great about the museum itself is that we have digitized just about everything. So unlike keeping these archives in a basement somewhere, when you come to the museum, via various exhibits, you can see what we have in digital form. The Smothers Brothers, Laugh-In, Johnny Carson, and it just goes on and on and on. But it's not in an attic. It's not in a closed basement. It really is throughout the museum.
So much of what it means to actually have a museum these days is not just about a cool place to go see something or a staid or kind of stuffy place to go see something. There are so many elements that people come to expect, especially when you're talking about a Hall of Fame, especially when you're talking about a National Comedy Center, the idea of that national center. You have to be a research institution. You have to be also an archive for the history, and you've got to present it in a curated way to make it livable, breathable, while at the same time giving people interactive stuff to have them have a lot of fun while they're there. Plus, on top of it, just like Cooperstown, you've also got to somehow suggest the nature and spirit of comedy in the building and in the layout in a way that people can have fun and be reminded that they're actually there to celebrate laughter. So there's a lot of mandates that go on in there, and I'm just kind of curious from your own standpoint and from what you see unfold there, how are you guys able to maintain the balance as a serious archive? Because it is important that historians know where they can go, because the names you've dropped, Joan Rivers, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, these are serious people. I mean, and Lindsey, and I love the new movie about Saturday Night Live by Ivan Reitman's son. So much of it is so good because we actually get a clear portrait of George Carlin in it and Milton Berle in it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And you guys have to create that balance. So what can somebody coming by to bring their kids, how can that experience be different if they're coming by as a real student of the craft?
That's a wonderful question, Jimmy, and I'll answer it in two different ways. One is just how interactive and personalized this experience is. We know that comedy is, everyone has very different comedy tastes. And so what this museum, what the National Comedy Center allows you to do, when you first come in, you create a sense of humor profile by answering a whole bunch of questions in our lobby at a kiosk. And so we get to know the kind of comedy that you like. And so your entire visit is curated based on your sense of humor. So that's a way to, because comedy is such a broad topic, and because it is so, dependent on the person, what kind of comedy they love. I mean, we are giving you you're getting an experience that is unique to you throughout your 2, 3, 4 hours at the museum. So that's really unique, and people love that way of navigating the museum. So that's one thing to be aware of. I'm trying to think of what else I was going to say on that topic. But it is, our comedy heritage is incredibly important. I mean, what comedy means to this country in terms of speaking truth to power, et cetera, we take it extremely seriously, but we also want to make sure that you're having a great time as you navigate the museum.
I love the sense of humor profile thing when you come in. That makes it so personalized. And so I wanted
awesome.
It's so cool. I can't wait to go. I will certainly come when I'm up that way. But I love this, that you're expanding on the Saturday Night Live tip, the exhibit in celebration of the show's 50th anniversary. One thing, by the way, that's so cool, they have the cue cards from Nate Bargatze's Washington Dream sketch, one of the greatest sketches of all time from one of the best comedians. And they were donated by him, by Nate specifically, which is really cool. So what's very neat about this is that since you do have scripts and rewrites and the cue cards and all that kind of thing, it makes me think, Gary, I was at Saturday Night Live with my mom and sister when it was Garth Brooks was the host and Christopher Gaines was the musical guest. We were physically there. It was amazing. We saw both the rehearsal and the live show, which are also two different things. And it's a moment that I will never, ever, ever forget as a massive SNL fan. But it makes me think in this regard, what does it mean with you guys preserving comedy in its draft form from those scripts and rewrites and cue cards instead of just the final performance? Let's talk about that, because that really, to me, as it pertains to Saturday Night Live, positions SNL as this living document of culture, and that's what y'all are able to do. Seeing what worked, what didn't, what was funny at the time, and what was like, oh, too much, we're not ready, not too soon. Y'all are able to show all that with all the artifacts, if that makes sense. So talk about, yeah.
Yeah, Lindsey, what you're getting at is a big part of what we do, which is showing annotated scripts, showing the process of creating comedy. So, for instance, we have you mentioned Saturday Night Live just now. We have original writer Alan Zweibel's entire archive of the first 5 years of Saturday Night Live with his scripts. And what you can see on these is, like you're saying, early versions of sketches, hand annotated notes in the margins, and it really and all of this has been digitized, so you can go through it at the museum, and it really shows you how whether it's sketch writers at SNL or whether it's comedians writing their sets, how they go from an early version and how that the evolution of a sketch or the deli scene from When Harry Met Sally or a stand-up routine from Seinfeld, etc., and how that goes from its earliest stages to getting on stage as a final piece of comedy. The thing about comedy is whether it's actors, stand-up comedians, sketch performers, if they do it right, it looks incredibly easy.
Yeah.
And people don't always realize how much craft, how that they've been working at this for 20 plus years, and there's so much work that goes into even writing a stand-up set and perfecting a great 6-minute set for the Tonight Show. And so we try to pull the curtain back and really explain what it takes to do this craft of comedy.
By the way,
and I remember.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, please go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, I remember what I was going to say earlier. The other thing that these exhibits have really been well designed to do, and there's over 50 exhibits in our 37,000 square feet museum here, is that we built it so that if you're we call it skimmers, swimmers, and divers. So if you can be a modest fan, you don't have to be a super fan, and you're still going to love this. But we have so much depth at each exhibit that if you want to dive in deep because you're a huge Carson fan or a huge Dick Van Dyke fan with our Carl Reiner exhibit, or you love Joan Rivers, you can stay at a particular exhibit for an hour or two and dive in really, really deep. Or you can just skim that one, and if you aren't that much into a particular TV show, and then you can move on. So it's really caters to the super fan and also the casual fan.
Well, and the other thing is, too, is Lindsey asked the question about that national status, and here's one of the places where it actually comes into play, because you brought up the Carson thing and the and by the way, I don't know if I never told this to Lindsey either. Claire, who is my wife, one of the ways that we bonded very early when we were first getting to know each other was we were both massive fans of the Dick Van Dyke sitcom. We just love, and we can actually talk about it in depth to the point where we can make an argument there is no television show Mad Men without the Dick Van Dyke Show, because it's the first workplace comedy. The Johnny Carson immersive experience also has the benefit of that its virtual host is Jimmy Fallon. So you're able to have access to him, and by having Fallon on, we actually get a sense of not just the past of what the Carson experience was like, but a person who stands on the other side of the continuum. That you guys are able to draw on resources through your contacts, through your associations, through the research and archive aspect of it as well, to create a totality here, because any great museum does not speak to just then, it speaks to how then is still impacting now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you've captured it really nicely, Jimmy, with regard to, and one of the reasons why we call it a center rather than a museum is because it is a living, breathing institution, and having the comedians of today who, when we walk through, absolutely love this place, but having them comment on and tell us and showcase the artists that they loved in the past. We have a 60-foot video wall called the Comedy Continuum that's essentially the 6 degrees of separation between artists, and it shows the connections between today's artists and those that came before them, whether it's Carol Burnett, Dick Van Dyke, Sid Caesar, and it shows how they were influenced by those artists, the artists that mean the most to them. And it's a way to show younger generations, introduce them to whether it's Jackie Gleason, Joan Rivers, etc. So that's a very powerful part of the museum, no question about it. And you're right. I mean, seeing Jimmy Fallon as a hologram on stage talking about Carson and interviewing Johnny Carson clips is a very powerful part of the museum.
Okay, I want, if you're able, Gary, I'd love for you to take out your crystal ball here. We're talking from the National Comedy Center up in Jamestown. We're talking with Gary Hahn, who's the Vice President of Marketing and Communications there. Gary, I find this very interesting because we're going to talk about Lucy and Desi here, but Lucille Ball, I watched I've watched documentaries and the movie, Being the Ricardos about her, and of course, Amy Poehler's Lucy and Desi, and I'm just fascinated by Lucy from a visionary standpoint. And you know, she had such a vision for her hometown becoming this destination for comedy. If Lucy launched today, if she were to walk into comedy, both the archives there, but just watching it, I'm so curious if in your mind, if we're gonna guess here, if we're gonna take out the crystal ball, if she launched today, what would she kind of crush, and what would shock her about, you think, the current comedy system? What would work that she was doing then, still now, and what wouldn't, and kind of what role would she play as a producer first versus creative, you think?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, you know, what was so unique about Lucille was not only was she just unbelievably talented in front of the camera, but she was running Desi Studios by the early 60s, first with Desi and then on her own. So she was essentially the first female CEO of a Hollywood studio, and did that for about 5 years before Desilu was sold to Paramount. Well, I think first of all, I think she would be, you know, amazed at how comedy now extends well beyond screens, you know, television screens, movie screens, and the fact that it is pervasive. It's on our phones, etc. I mean, I think this would probably fascinate. I mean, I don't want to assume anything here, but I think she would be. She would love the fact that, my guess is, she would love the fact that there is more access, particularly for women, and a more diverse, you know, opportunities for people to be doing comedy, thanks to all these other opportunities and all these other screens in our, you know, our phones, etc. That it is not kind of the restrictive, only if you have a big television studio deal can you get access to audiences. I think that would appeal to her. I know she kind of preferred, you know, clean comedy, you know, and family-oriented comedy. So she might not be as thrilled at some of the directions that comedy has gone in. But, you know, it was her original vision to have Jamestown celebrate all of comedy. So I think she would have been very, very proud that we have the National Comedy Center here in her hometown. I mean, when the Jamestown leadership called her up in 1989, really just a few months before she sadly passed away, and they asked, can we do a museum? Can we have a festival devoted to you? It was Lucy who suggested herself that I'd rather see you celebrate the art form of comedy, not just my work. And, you know, we do both. You know, we first did create the Lucy Desi Museum. That's just a few blocks from the National Comedy Center. But I think she would have been particularly proud that we are celebrating the art form and all of the artists that would have meant a great deal to her.
So you're saying Lucy wouldn't have gone on tour with Louis C.K. these days?
Probably not.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Unlikely.
Okay, noted.
I do think if she would have walked into the lobby, walk into the National Comedy Center, she would be, I'm guessing, overwhelmed and extraordinarily proud. You guys can go to comedycenter.org and take a look. Trust me, it's a beautiful website that gives you a real sense of the rhythms and the pacing of the Comedy Center. You brought up Lucy. Lindsey, and I kind of want to touch on this as well, too, because I think in many ways this is history of American entertainment, not just comedy itself, because we all forget that the 50s, the one place where you could go a little weird and make things really strange, with the notable exception of Rod Serling, if you wanted to do anything like innovative in regards to production, using two cameras, doing absurdish kind of shorts, doing madcap stuff where the wheels literally did come off and people kept rolling, comedy was where it's at. I mean, the Lucille Ball show, the Ernie Kovacs show, your show of shows, all of that television is so incredibly innovative. A lot of the leaps that TV made as an art form happened not because of the drama or the cowboy shows, but because of comedy. And in many ways, you get in a history of television and a history of American entertainment kind of rolled in along with that. Is that fair?
I think totally so, and you have to mention Desi.
Carl Freund, right?
There,
yeah.
Because it was Desi who, and Lucy always gave Desi so much credit for helping to invent the 3-camera studio approach with the live audience on film, which is essentially what I Love Lucy innovated in 1951, and it's why we still have pristine films of those 179 episodes today. And that essentially was the approach to filming, sitcoms for the most part, until the kind of the single camera approach got a bit more popular. But even Big Bang Theory and Seinfeld and Friends were using the same technique that was pioneered by I Love Lucy in 1951. So we celebrate that at the Lucy Desi Museum, and it's what essentially brought television to the West Coast. It had really been, via the approaches that were being used with Sid Caesar and Ed Sullivan, etc. It was a New York phenomenon. It was done in real theaters. It was not done at sound stages. It was done carried live in the East Coast. It was not on film. And once the I Love Lucy innovations happened, it's what led to the bulk of the television production industry moving to Hollywood. And the invention of the rerun, because you had these pristine pieces of film, you were able to rerun this. So there were no reruns until essentially I Love Lucy.
It's so cool, Jim. I don't know if you felt this too. The first time I went on the website, I was completely taken aback at comedycenter.org, because I was like, I was dumbfounded by how the magnitude of this space and why I didn't know about it, and now I can't not know about it. But it's very profound. And then you're like, well, of course that exists. Why didn't I know about it? And so if you will just leave us with this, if somebody leaves the National Comedy Center understanding one thing about comedy, not as entertainment as we've talked about today, but as a part of who we are as humans, as a culture, what would you personally hope that is?
I think, that this is a true art form, that it takes an enormous amount of work, and that there is a craft to this. And I guess having respect, even if there's aspects of comedy or there are performers that maybe are not your personal taste, just having respect for those who engage in this art form and understanding how hard it really is to make great comedy, whether it's Saturday Night Live, whether it's I Love Lucy, whether it's doing stand-up like Jerry Seinfeld and Nate Bargatze, that this is a challenging but very rewarding, art form. And hopefully, while you're learning, you're also coming to a museum that is filled with laughter. I mean, what we love about the National Comedy Center is it's the only museum where you're just hearing loud laughs as you turn every corner and walk down every hallway. And so
What
the fact
joy!
that we're bringing joy while educating is something that we just love.
Wow.
Gary Hahn is the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the National Comedy Center and Lucy Desi Museum. It's been too long. Let's not make it so long again. Let's figure out the next big event that you guys are curating and rolling out and get your butt on here so we can talk about that in specificity and all the work that goes into simply putting together one particular exhibit. Promise us, Gary, right now on the air.
I'd love to. And this is an important year for us because this is the 75th anniversary year of I Love Lucy, so we got lots of things happening this year, and we'd love to see your listeners come visit. They will not regret it. They'll have a great time.
By the way, Lindsey, we have a pillow that says I Love Lucy that sits on our couch back in California. Just wanted to
Well,
let you
and
know.
you can't, Jim, we can't ignore the fact that Dave Nemo says over in the chat, not only that, but Lucy was called the greatest pair of legs on Broadway back in 1933. Don't dumb her down, but all that and a bag of chips. We'll just say #balance to Lucy and Viva la Lucy.
Great ball of fire. Gary Hahn is here, Vice President, Marketing Communications at the National Comedy Center. Thank you, Gary. We love having you.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.